So first of all, welcome to this Law Week webinar. Before we begin, we would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands from which we're meeting today. So today I'm meeting you from the land of the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, and we pay our respect to their elders past and present and to their laws and customs. We also extend our respect to First Nations people participating today or watching the recording. And I'd like to acknowledge that we're all meeting from various different Aboriginal lands today. Okay, so I will just give a quick, so this is the first Law Week webinar that we're running. So this one is called, so the Law Week series is People in the Law. And today is Legal Aid New South Wales. So you will meet people that work across the LawAccess New South Wales and the Family, Civil and Criminal Law Divisions of Legal Aid. Our next webinar is tomorrow, which is on Ombudsman Services. And then on the 23rd, we have Meet a Magistrate, Barrister and Solicitor. So you're welcome to also tune into those ones if you're interested. Okay, so do you know what the work that Legal Aid does? This panel is here to tell you a little bit more about what we do if you don't know, and if you have any questions, like I said, please ask them. Or everyone that is here today is experienced and really looking forward to answering your questions. The purpose of the webinar is to help make the legal system more understandable and less intimidating to people who might not have much to do with it, to provide a unique opportunity and to meet people from legal aid across all different divisions, and to dispel some of the mystery of the law and make it easier for people to seek help from legal aid when they need it. So on that, we'll move on to our first slide, which is a short video clip from the new series of Heartbreak High, which is an interesting video. So I'll play that one now for you. Oh, sorry, before we do that, if we could just go around and introduce everyone on the panel today. First up, we have Anthony, and then if we could pass on to each panel member.
Thanks, Katarina, and thank you to all the other panel members and everybody watching at home. It's such a pleasure to be speaking with you all today. So I'm Anthony Alashka. I'm one of the team leaders of the Legal Information Group here at LawAccess New South Wales.
Hi, everybody. My name is Dean Fernandez. I'm a criminal lawyer at the Children's Legal Service and one of the panelists here today.
Hi, everyone. My name's Sharda. I'm a family lawyer with the Early Intervention Unit, which is one of the specialist family law services with Legal Aid.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kiri, and I'm a senior solicitor in Port Macquarie, New South Wales, and I head the civil law team.
Thanks so much. Appreciate it. Okay, we will now move on to the video.
Can't do this.
This thread is sick. Reckon Amory really killed someone's budgie?
Put your phone down and do something productive.
What's legal aid?
It's when you're a povo loser and you can't afford to pay for your own lawyer.
Hey, you're not a povo loser.
Okay, so I think the reason that we chose to play this video is to show that you know, there are some misconceptions about legal aid in the public and our legal aid clients. And so I think that it's good that people are speaking about legal aid, but maybe not in such a negative way. So this is a good opportunity for us to have a discussion about what we think about legal aid and why we work here. So I'll pass on to each individual panel member to just tell the audience a little bit about what you do at Legal Aid and your thoughts on the video. So we'll start on thoughts on the video. We'll start with you, Anthony.
I think the video definitely gives, well, it perpetuates this false idea that legal aid, provides a lesser level and quality of service compared to the private sector. So I'll let the lawyers on the panel speak to the fact that lawyers that work for legal aid are just as skilled and competent and dedicated and passionate as those that work in private practice. But I definitely think it also gives this idea that legal aid is only for a certain demographic. It's only for certain kinds of people, and obviously in this case they're referring to people that don't have much money. While legal aid is aimed at assisting those facing disadvantage, we can actually help all kinds of people with all kinds of legal problems. We here at LawAccess are actually the starting point, and we can help anybody with a legal problem in New South Wales.
Great, thank you, Anthony.
If
Shada, Dean?
if I can go next. Oh, sorry,
Yeah.
Shada.
Go on, Dean.
No, just on that, the concept of povo loser. So as a criminal defense lawyer at the Children's Legal Service at Legal Aid, one of the great things about being a children's lawyer at Legal Aid is that we represent all children, and regardless of their financial means, because of course many children don't work, they still live with parents or with carers, and so they don't have the means to pay for a lawyer. And so one of the great things about my job is I can represent all children from all walks of life, and all of them are not povo losers. So that's what I'll add that for now.
And I would just add to that, we have such immense respect for our clients, the lawyers, not just lawyers, everyone who chooses to work at Legal Aid does it because they're passionate about helping people. When someone's got a problem and they need to get legal advice, find out what they can do, it doesn't matter whether you've got a lot of money or a little bit of money. It doesn't matter about your personal circumstances. Everyone needs that same help. So we have a great deal of respect for our clients, and it's great that we get the chance to tell you about what it is that we do and how we do it, because the work that we do can be very varied. And so Legal Aid can help people, but in different ways. We may be able to do a lot, run a whole case for someone, or we may be able to do a little bit, give a little bit of advice and assistance. And it may be that depending on your circumstances, including financial circumstances, that might impact on how much work we can do. But that's something that we're going to address as we go through this session. And I would say that one of the things Anthony touched upon in terms of how the lawyers see their work here, I know that a lot of people from law school are desperate to get a job at Legal Aid. It's a really highly prestigious place to work, which a lot of people don't realize. Getting a job here is a really wonderful thing, and it's really hard to do. And our lawyers, I really say, are some of the best in the state. We are passionate about the work that we do, and often people are coming to Legal Aid from positions in private practice. They have a lot of experience. I myself, I'm an accredited specialist in family law, which means that the Law Society's put me through a whole heap of exams to say that I've got a special area of learning in family law. And if I was in private practice, I'd be charging people probably $600 or $700 an hour to have a chat with me. And I work at Legal Aid and I'm not charging anyone anything to speak to me. So this is work that we as lawyers really want to do. And in the legal profession, this is really respected work.
Thanks for that, Shada. Kiri, do you have any comments?
Yeah, there's something about the sense of disempowerment that shines through in the video that we see so often in our clients, and something too that I can personally relate to. Growing up, I was witnessing domestic violence. I saw addiction in the home. I came from a real low socioeconomic status. So it's that sense that kind of hits home to me, that this is why I work at Legal Aid, because I can see my childhood in my clients, and there's something about that lack of self-compassion that also is seen in the video that we see in our clients, that we want to be able to help and make a difference in the work that we do. This is not about billing for us. This is not about money. We are really, the sense of social justice resonates with us.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Kiri. What we'll do now is we'll move on to each individual panel member to just tell us a little bit about what they do in their role. So we'll start off with Anthony from LawAccess.
Okay, so LawAccess is a part of LawAccess New South Wales is a part of Legal Aid, and we operate as the starting point for your legal journey. So as a team leader, I manage and support a team of information officers who are not lawyers, but they are our frontline staff that answer inquiries from members of the public who need legal help. So my role involves providing guidance, coaching, consulting with them about complex inquiries, and performing quality assurance checks to ensure that we as an organisation are providing our customers with accurate legal information and referrals with flexible person-first service delivery. I started my journey at LawAccess New South Wales in November 2022 as an information officer myself. And what motivates me in my role is really a passion for access to justice and a belief that everybody with a legal problem should be able to access the help that they need.
Thank you so much for that, Anthony. We might move on to Dean.
Great, thanks, Katerina. As this slide says, I'm a senior solicitor at the Children's Legal Service. I am a criminal defence lawyer. That is, I represent those who are charged with a crime in the courts, and I now work in the Children's Legal Service, which primarily focuses on the Children's Court. But I've also worked across legal aid in the local court and district court and Supreme Court, and so my job is just essentially representing those people who come through the courts in that criminal aspect. And why I've been at Legal Aid for decades now, and why I've stayed and why I like doing the work I do is, as all the other panelists have mentioned already, the idea of social justice is a big deal to me. I have seen our clients do come from many backgrounds, but particularly when I was representing adults, we represent a certain demographic of people in the community that do need help. They don't have the means to defend themselves. They don't have the backgrounds in which they can express themselves in a persuasive way. And so what I like to conceive of my role as a criminal defense lawyer is to level the playing field so that their voice can be heard through the courts.
Thank you, Dean. We'll move on to Shada.
So I am a family lawyer in a specialist unit of Legal Aid. My unit's called the Early Intervention Unit, which is quite a mouthful. We usually call ourselves the duty lawyers because our job is to be on duty at the court. If you think about family law, which is anything to do with children, parenting, family law, separation, and care and protection law, which is when the Department of Communities and Justice, they used to be called DOCS, they used to be called FACS, anything to do with the department getting involved in families. So we can give advice, information, assistance, representation, depending on people's circumstances and what their situation are in those areas across the whole family law division. My team, the Early Intervention Unit, is a specialist unit that actually sits at court and goes out to places other than offices. So outreach services in migrant resource centres and sometimes the family relationship centres, sometimes hospitals and other outreach locations in the community where you'd be able to come and see a lawyer and get some family law advice and assistance. At court, as duty lawyers, when someone doesn't have a lawyer, they might be able to come and see us and get some advice and assistance. And depending on their circumstances, we can help people at court as well. So on duty, we're kind of like the emergency room, just dealing with whatever the emergency is. We don't necessarily become people's ongoing lawyers. That is a job I've done before, but in my current role, that's not what we generally do.
Thanks for that, Shada. Now we'll move on to our final panel member, Kiri.
Thanks, Katerina. I am a generalist civil solicitor and I'm based in the regions. So we intercept a lot of people through our telephone advice clinics and face-to-face outreach clinics that we drive to. We cover a catchment area over several hundred kilometres. So we do a bit of travelling in the regions. And really, describing civil law, I almost always say that if it's not family law and it's not crime, then it's generally going to be civil related. And by that, I mean, it is law generally related to your everyday life. It's seeing clients who have applied for a Centrelink income and have been rejected. We can help on those appeals to the AAT. We can also represent clients who have been scheduled in mental health wards and would like to be released. We also assist clients facing homelessness and have received eviction notices, so we can try and save their housing for them. We know in the civil division that once somebody's housing is lost, then that really is a snowball effect into other ongoing legal issues. So if we can stop that eviction happening from the outset, there's a really good chance to elevating somebody and safeguarding their psychological safety. We also deal with fines and work and development orders. We see inmates in custody, so we often travel to the local jail and correctional centres. We also assist with discrimination and police complaints. Generally, any type of legal matter that has a corporation or a business on the other side. We also assist with Australian consumer law matters. So if you've brought a faulty product and it's not working, that's often in relation to secondhand motor vehicles. So the law that we deal with is very diverse and it's quite complex and it's difficult to try and navigate all those different pieces of legislation, but that's our job and we're across all of that as a generalist civil solicitor.
Thank you so much, Kiri. I'm just going to stop the slides now. And we might, I'm going to start asking some questions to the panel. And just a reminder to everyone listening to, like I said at the beginning, don't be shy, ask any kind of questions that you would like to ask in the Q&A function. And hopefully we get to answer some of them today. But for now, we'll start with one for Anthony. Having a legal problem can feel really overwhelming and stressful for a lot of people. How can somebody get help from legal aid and where can they start?
Thanks, Katarina. That's a really good question because, as you said, legal problems can feel stressful and overwhelming. And often people that are facing legal problems have no idea where to turn for help or where to start their legal journey. LawAccess New South Wales is a really good starting point for legal help. So we are the single entry point, not just for those seeking help from legal aid, but for anybody with the legal problem, with the New South Wales legal problem. So you can think of us like the gateway for legal assistance for the public. Last year, we helped over 23,000 people, and that's over the phone. And we helped over 16,000 people over our web chat platform. So we understand that the legal system can be confusing and intimidating. Our role is to demystify it and to put you on the right path so that you can get the help that you need. Now, when you contact us, either by phone or by web chat, you'll speak to an information officer who, as I mentioned, is not a lawyer, but they can assist you by providing you with legal information, by referring you to an external service provider for legal or non-legal help. And because we are a part of Legal Aid, we can also book eligible customers in for advice appointments at Legal Aid clinics. Now, providing legal information is a really important part of what we do here at LawAccess New South Wales. Last year, out of the 155,000 inquiries we received, we were able to resolve over 43% of those through the provision of legal information alone. So our information officers have up-to-date knowledge and training on a wide variety of legal problems, and can provide customers with plain language legal information from a variety of approved resources. So we have a lot of resources on our website, and I would encourage you all to take a look. The My Problem is About section of the newly co-branded LawAccess Legal Aid website has legal information on various topics like debt, fines, family issues, as well as dealing with a criminal charge. It also contains step-by-step guides, examples of completed applications and forms that customers might need throughout the course of their legal matter. And for many customers, particularly those with the ability to self-help, legal information will be enough to enable them to take the next steps in their legal matter. Now, when an information officer has determined that information alone is not going to be sufficient to assist the customer and the customer needs further help, will we have processes in place that guide us how to best assist customers for further help. So we always put the customer at the center of what we do. We don't just look at the problem, we look at the person as well. So we will consider what type of help that person needs, whether it be legal or non-legal assistance. If they do require legal advice, we'll look at things like what type of legal matter does the customer have? Are they particularly vulnerable? Are they able to self-help? Do they have disabilities that and therefore require adjustment to get help? And this really helps us to determine whether the person would benefit from perhaps a telephone advice appointment, whether they need ongoing legal help or someone to appear at court. Do they need a face-to-face advice appointment? Do they need help with a form? And really considering all of these factors helps us to decide what service would be best to assist the customer. So we might refer a customer to a local community legal centre or a service that may provide non-legal help. And this is done using our database of approved trusted service providers. Now, because we are a part of Legal Aid, we can also book customers in for an advice appointment with a legal aid lawyer if their circumstances and their legal issue meet our criteria. So you can think of us not just as the entry point for help from legal aid, but really for the entire legal sector. So we get calls from people who have no clue where to go. It really is an information officer's role to get them on to that next step in their legal journey, and whether that be through information, a referral to an external service, or a legal aid appointment.
Great, thank you so much, Anthony. I guess you've already kind of answered this, but I suppose if you could just, in a few short sentences, just let us know if someone is worried that they can't get help from legal aid or think that they're not eligible, where should they still be reaching out?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you have a question about eligibility, or if you think you won't be eligible for legal aid, you should definitely reach out to LawAccess. Because we are a part of Legal Aid, our information officers can assist you with information and guidance around the policies and tests that determine eligibility for legal aid. And we can also determine if you can be booked in for an advice appointment with the legal aid lawyer, who can then assist you if you are requiring ongoing help and need to submit an application for legal aid. So even if you're unsure, give us a call. We can provide you with some information about that eligibility, and we can see if we can make a booking for you.
Yeah, thank you, Anthony. And it was interesting to hear your stats about how many of your how many people call and never have to actually go that far, because obviously you provide really good information that people can self-help, and if they're not necessarily eligible for further assistance, they can at least get a bit of help through the resources that LawAccess has. So that's great to hear. Thank you. I have a question now for Dean. You mentioned that you, at the moment, are a criminal defence lawyer in the Children's Legal Service. So could you tell us a little bit about what the difference is between the Children's Court and other courts in New South Wales?
Yeah, thanks, Katarina. I work in the Children's Court. In the Children's Court of New South Wales has two main jurisdictions that they deal with daily. One is more Shada's line of work, I suppose, or her colleagues, which is the care and protection jurisdiction. That is where the state, the Department of Communities and Justice, have to intervene and perhaps look after the best interests of children, and perhaps in the extreme, take children away from parents. And that's when parents go to the Children's Court to try to get their children back or deal with the best interests of children. I worked in the other jurisdiction of the Children's Court, which is in the criminal jurisdiction, which deals with when police or other prosecuting agencies charge children under the age of 18 and over the age of 10. And so I represent children charged with crimes. In the Children's Court, the criminal law is the same as it is in the local court or district court and above. However, there's one that is children get charged with the same kinds of crimes that adults do. But the one main difference that is popularly conceived in the Children's Court is that because the Children's Court's focus is on largely on the rehabilitation of children who are charged with crimes, a lot of the penalties or sentences that children get and a lot of the procedures involved in prosecuting children are a lot more sympathetic to children. One would say a little bit more lenient for children, but the reason for that is children being children and children requiring guidance because of their immaturity and young ages. The whole idea of the Children's Court is to rehabilitate children. And so that's the main difference with the Children's Court and other courts. In terms of other differences, we do sit down at the bar table. We don't stand up in the Children's Court, which is one thing. Many other practitioners who don't practice regularly in the Children's Court often mistake to do the stand up. We always tell them to this function, just take a seat. And so that's one cosmetic difference, but essentially we deal with the same criminal laws as the local court and district court. If I could add one further substantive difference between the Children's Court and the local court is that because children are children, the jurisdiction of the Children's Court is much wider. What I mean by that is some crimes or most crimes that are called indictable offences that are prosecuted against adults in the local courts, a lot more indictable offences are dealt with in the district court. And so a lot more serious offences are dealt with. There's a lot more differences in between less serious and serious work in the adult jurisdiction. In the Children's Court, most offences are dealt with summarily. That is, a lot of really serious offences, for example, like robberies, armed robberies, breaking and entering charges are dealt with summarily in the Children's Court, whereas compared with adults, they get dealt with in the district court. And the benefit of that for children is that, again, with this rehabilitative function of the Children's Court, most offences should be prosecuted in the Children's Court rather than in the higher courts. That's another substantive difference. Thanks, Katarina.
Thanks so much, Dean. While we're on young people, are there any other things that the Children's Legal Service do to help young people besides actually appearing in court?
Yep. Again, I mentioned in the intro that for children, there's no, as compared with adults, there's no means test or guidelines or merit tests. And so basically I can represent any child charged with a crime in New South Wales. And that's one of the best things about this role. But what we also do, because of that, and the reason behind that is that children being children, they are a vulnerable class of people in this state. And so that we not only represent children in courts, but we also visit them when they're in custody in juvenile detention centres. And we speak to them, and if they have any legal needs, we can do some follow-up work about their legal needs and make appropriate referrals if we can't assist them. We also provide legal advice to children through the Legal Aid Youth Hotline. And that's a hotline that's available to children under the age of 18. And they support people who need legal advice when they're charged with a crime or have a legal question about crime. And and that's an available service during the week, usually from 9 a.m. to midnight, but also on weekends for 24 hours a day. And we staffed by lawyers from the Children's Legal Service and the Legal Aid to answer questions from children who call that line, either by themselves, the child, or through the police station. It's the law that says that anytime a child is at a police station, either charged with a crime or has been asked by police to attend a police station, because they are a vulnerable person under the law, they have to get some legal advice from a lawyer. And so that's another service we provide to children in this state through Legal Aid. In addition to that, in the Children's Legal Service, as with the Criminal Law Division generally, because we are the specialists in this area, we do have a voice in terms of law reform. And so we give our voice to whenever a law is introduced by Parliament or is considered to be introduced by Parliament, we prepare some submissions for law reform as well.
Great,
Thanks,
thank you so much. Shada, a question for you. So you mentioned that you work in a specific team, the Early Intervention Unit, and you did touch a little bit on the difference between that and the rest of family law, but would you be able to go into a little bit more detail about the kind of work you do and how that's different?
Sure. So in a legal aid office, and I don't know if we've actually discussed this, but just so that people know, in a legal aid office, when you come in, you'll see a bunch of lawyers. We know what we specialize in. You don't have to. But whatever the particular problem that you've got, lawyers specialize in a particular area. So a civil lawyer may know a little bit about family law, but is probably going to refer you to a family lawyer to get specific family law advice. And the same for criminal law. I can tell you a general information, but I'm going to refer to a specific criminal lawyer if someone actually needs criminal law advice. So when it comes to family law, in our offices, we have teams of family lawyers who are available, who do advice clinics, who go out to locations as well, and provide family law advice to people going through separation, divorce, asking about parenting arrangements, property, anything to do with department issues and so on. Our lawyers can give advice and assistance, which is small help, or if someone's funded by legal aid, that means legal aid pays the bill for their lawyer, they can have either an in-house lawyer, a legal aid employed lawyer, or a private lawyer who's paid by legal aid to become their ongoing lawyer to run their case. So legal aid has policies which apply to what kind of service we can give for each kind of case and what we can do. So we look at our means test, our merit test, as Anthony said. There are so many policies available. And so our lawyers know the kinds of policies that apply in our areas. And for me to sit here and tell you would take hours, and it wouldn't make much sense either. On our website, there are some really helpful little indicator tests that you can do to see if you might be eligible for legal aid, even if you're worried about speaking to a lawyer and what that might mean and if you can get that help. The thing is, though, usually there's some help available for almost everyone. And so in circumstances where people are at court and they don't have a lawyer, we don't have to apply the same kinds of tests, but we also don't do the same kinds of work. So on duty at the court, and the family law courts are federal courts, so at Parramatta, Sydney, Newcastle, Wollongong, and other regional locations, we have lawyers who are on duty to help people who don't have a lawyer. So a judge might say this person doesn't have a lawyer and doesn't know what's going on and needs some legal advice before they can understand if they should agree or should ask for something. They don't even know what has happened or what the paperwork that they've got means potentially. Sometimes people come to court just because they know that something bad has happened. They don't know what else to do. And they know that there's a court building, so they'll come in. So we have lawyers on duty to give that immediate help with whatever needs to be done. we deal, in my team, the early intervention unit, we deal with things trying to help people get resolutions before it gets serious, before it gets to court. Maybe can we try mediation, negotiating outside of court with the help of a lawyer and legal aid specialist mediation department to see if we can get some agreement. We've got support services within legal aid, because going through any kind of family law issue is going to be pretty distressing for people. It's a time when relationship breakdown is a time when a lot of expectations are changing. It's very distressing for most people. There are a lot of things in the media about what happens when relationships break down. We don't have any judgment about the people that come to see us. We have specialist support services that we link to for both men and women. We have a specialist domestic violence team. We have a lot of resources for people who come in who might not just need a legal solution. And in my team, especially, whilst we deal with things early intervention unit, we try and deal with things early, we're also dealing with emergencies. So at court, sometimes what we're dealing with is situations where a parent has taken a child without the other parent's permission, and that child might be at risk. And it's an emergency application to the court to bring a child back from wherever they've been taken, or sometimes emergency applications to stop a child from being basically kidnapped overseas, taken out of the country without a parent's permission. So those are pretty intense situations. And I often tell people, I'm an emergency lawyer, so it's normal for me. This is my everyday job, but it's not common in reality. It happens, but it's not happening every day, but it's happening every day for me. So these are the kinds of things that we help people with and we deal with. They are big emergencies, and it's important for people to know what to do if they're worried about this, or to get help if it's about to happen. So that's what my team does.
Thank you so much, Shada. Kiri, we've heard lots about the criminal and the family law division. As I think you mentioned in your intros, often how I describe it as well. So you've got family and crime, and then everything in between is your everyday legal issues and what we call civil law issues. So could you tell us a little bit about the day-to-day work that you do? And yeah.
Yeah, so in the regions, it's no one day is the same. We often have people just come into the office with emergency situations that require urgent legal advice. And we try our best to try and intercept those clients if they can't be diverted into clinics. We can have things like conferences in relation to unfair dismissal scheduled that day. We may have appearances often via Teams or online for the Administrative Appeals Tribunal, or we're often running across the road to appear in NCAT on consumer matters or guardianship matters. Port Macquarie has a really high percentage of elderly people in the population, so we really do spend a lot of time in that guardianship jurisdiction where people have lost capacity to make their own decisions and require somebody to be appointed as either a guardian to decide where they can live and what medical treatment they get, or make decisions around finances. So we appear in that jurisdiction quite frequently. So apart from appearances, we may be doing driving to an advice clinic or an outreach service. And in the regions, probably more distinctly than the city, we do spend a lot of time doing community legal education events. So attending schools to give a talk, or local stalls and law week events, I guess. And travelling to the correctional centres. We have one that's probably 45 minutes away. So we're often on the road travelling there to give advice and assisting those inmates. Yeah, any day is unlike another day. So we also spend a lot of time drafting. We spend a lot of time doing written submissions, lots of paperwork in civil. Yeah.
Thanks, Kiri. And I suppose you've already touched on it a little bit, but I suppose as our only panel member from a region, what do you think is the biggest difference and, positive, negative, anything about being out in a region compared to those in Sydney?
Well, apart from the 10-minute commute to the office,
That's what I was thinking as well.
And probably the same rate of pay in a low cost living area as the city solicitors. They're the two bonuses. But I think it's being across the hallway from our criminal colleagues and our family law solicitors. So knowing innately what they're doing, and we often get calls from the court from our colleagues saying, "Oh, hey, we've got an inmate here or a client, a criminal law client that needs some urgent civil advice. They're about to lose their housing. Can you run down to the courthouse?" And so we often are able to do those kinds of things that may not be possible in the city. But we're also really lucky in that civil law has a range of specialist teams that we have ready access to. So things like a prisoner's legal service, the elder abuse service, the disaster response legal service, all of those statewide teams that we have ready access to. So if we intercept clients in the regions that need some really specialised assistance because they are unique in their demographic, then we're able to make those calls and get them referred. So our referral networks in the regions are really quite good, and we're often intercepting calls from local stakeholders to say, "Oh, hey, Kiri, it's us again. We need to refer another client," and that is perhaps absent in the city as well.
Awesome. That's so great to hear how it works in different offices, and yeah, being able to just run down to the court when there's someone there that needs civil advice, in head office, there's so many different floors and stuff, and everyone's separated. So yeah, that's really cool that you get to do that kind of work. So now I have well, I was going to just check if we have any questions from the audience. I've been checking throughout. So we have one question. What kinds of, and this is probably, sorry, you probably wanted to break, Kiri, but it's probably directed at you. What kind of employment law matters can people get help with at Legal Aid?
Yeah, so if they have been triaged correctly, then we are often assisting people who have an income of less than 80,000 in relation to things generally related to dismissals, but also in addition to that, there's also things like discrimination at work, and we have a specialist Respect at Work legal service that deals with those. But we can also assist with general protections, and that is kind of in the realm of you haven't lost your job, but something adverse has happened to you in the workplace. So perhaps you've been demoted, or you haven't been given the same opportunities, or there has been discrimination. We can give advice and assistance in relation to those. And often we're appearing at conciliation conferences. Most of our employment work is based at the Fair Work Commission, but we do often see the Industrial Relations Commission work as well for our state and local government employees, but generally everyone else is a federal government, federal level employment based service. So we can go through the Fair Work Commission in relation to that.
Great, thank you so much. We've got a question for Dean. What does a typical day look like for you in the Children's Court, and what type of matters would you typically see, and ages, and how would you support them? So both, I suppose you might be able to touch on if there's any non-legal things you might be able to help with as well, referrals or anything like that.
Good question. The typical day, so my current role is I represent children charged with really serious crimes. So what's called serious children's indictable offences, so committal offences. Offences like armed robbery with dangerous weapon, sexual offences, kidnapping charges, murder, terrorism cases, right? These are what's called serious children's indictable offences. That is those that are too serious that cannot be ultimately finalised in the Children's Court. And so I represent those children for those matters. And the typical days of reading a lot of evidence or leading lots of paperwork, as Kiri has mentioned before. It's just it's the lot of a lawyer, right? But the reading a brief of evidence that the police give us about giving my children clients advice about whether the police can prove those offences against the child, and whether consistent with whatever instructions I get from my child client, whether they want to go plead guilty or not guilty, either in the children's court or the district court, the higher court. And essentially, a lot of my job involves, again, a lot of reading of a lot of evidence, and then trying to negotiate or trying to make deals with the prosecution, either police or the director of public prosecutions, the state body or Commonwealth bodies that prosecute more serious crimes, to try to get a good result for my client, either in the children's court or the district court. And so I do have a lot of office days where I can have the time to read these briefs of evidence. But when I do go to court, it is making sure that the timeline for these kinds of serious cases is met. And when there is a deal to be made, or when a client does plead guilty, I would represent them in the children's court in a plea or a sentence. If a young person says they're not guilty, I would appear for them in a trial or a hearing in the children's court. If they can also go to the trial or a hearing in the district court, and so I would appear in that jurisdiction with a barrister. And so, yeah, because of the function of my job, a lot of reading. Sorry, I keep saying that all the time, but it is just a lot of reading, and also a lot of advice giving too. But I suppose the thing with the children's court is that because I'm representing children who don't get legalese or don't get complex legal language, you have to communicate with them in a way that they do understand. And so a lot of my job is to try to convey or read and then process all that complicated legal information to children in a way they understand, in a way that they then can tell me what they want to tell me about their case. And so that's a day in the life, I suppose. In terms of in the children's court itself, when I am there, when I've represented for the summary offences, one of the good things about the children's court is that there are a lot of services already at the court. Youth Justice, the government agency that helps children who are been found guilty of offences, they are the essential services that can refer children for assistance in the community. There's also some intake services at court that can, community legal centres that help children in the children's court, that can play the triage role that children need in order to meet their non-criminal law needs. And so I rely on them to help me help the child get whatever help they need. And we have that support in the children's court because of its role in this rehabilitative function it has. And so when a child does come to court and we realize that they do need their help, which is probably the reason they got into trouble with the police in the first place, I deal with the criminal law side, but then I can also rely on related services to help the child's non-legal needs as well. Thanks.
Great, thank you, Dean. I have another question here. But before we get to that one, it's about working with social workers. But before I get to that, I'm thinking particularly Kiri and maybe Shada might have some experience in working in multidisciplinary teams, so teams that have like financial counsellors or youth workers or social workers or some other non-legal professionals embedded within the team. Do you know of how that works within legal aid?
My experience is limited to working with our Aboriginal field officers. We're really lucky to have an Aboriginal field officer stationed in Port Macquarie who really assists across all three divisions, will accompany crime solicitors to court, will help find clients that have gone missing or are uncontactable. And that has just been really essential to us performing our role and really complementing the service that we can provide. So unfortunately, we would love a social worker stationed in Port Macquarie, and I'm hopeful that that will happen in the future. But until then, our fingers are crossed.
Great,
Yeah.
thank you.
In family law, we've got So this is not just available to legal aid. At the courts, there are legal aid funds, men's and women's support, administers, I should say, men's and women's support services. So there's government funding for these support teams to be available to people going through family law situations. And they're not lawyers, so we often refer clients to them because, as we say, the lawyers can do the legal things. But things like talking about the support services, reaching out for counselors, things like that, I don't generally have the time to give to someone to help them connect with all the support services that they need. And so if I can connect them with one person who can do that, then that person then takes over and helps make all of those additional connections for them. In some of the teams of family law, we have a specialist domestic violence unit. There are staff within that unit who are actually employed as financial counselors and support workers and so on, who are able to immediately work directly with clients as well, who need that extra assistance and additional support. So as lawyers, the legal work we do doesn't usually solve all of the problems that a person comes up with. Like Dean said, there are a lot more things that impact on a person and how they can deal with the immediate situation, but also what happens next and what happens after that. And when the lawyers are talking to you and when I'm in legal mode, I'll be asking questions like, okay, and then what happened and what happened after that? And 5 years ago, did that happen as well? And then what happened after that? And do you have any records of that? What happens next? And when a lawyer is talking about things, we're looking at the legal problem and figuring out in our way the legal solution. That's not a human thing to do. As humans, we need also that additional support. So it's really good that we've got that additional support there. And in family law, I think especially, it's such a distressing time for everyone who's going through that system, that it's really good to know that there are support services out there.
I should add, Katerina, too, that being a part of the civil division, we do have access to social workers in head office. And so often they're drafting social reports for us to use at a tribunal in terms of our evidence. And financial counsellors also exist within the division to assist with budgets and those financial hardship applications. So we do have access to them if they're not stationed locally.
Great, thank you both. So I suppose that takes me to the actual question that was in the chat, which I'm thinking might be from a social worker external from Legal Aid, who's asking if, and I'm not sure if you can answer it, but I'm hopeful, if you have any tips on how social workers with clients who have, who have legal issues that they need help with legal aid, how can those social workers, do you have any tips on how they can better work with us to support their clients?
I've found it really useful for them to accompany clients to appointments, because often clients aren't in any position to remember certain things. So support workers or social workers will be able to retain that knowledge of what is needed and often act as that go-between between the solicitor and the client if the client is particularly struggling or has mental health conditions or any type of social problems that is a barrier for them communicating with their legal team. So that's been really useful for me in the past.
Yeah.
If I could add,
sorry, you go ahead.
Please, Shada, after you.
I was going to say, when it comes to support workers and social workers working with us, often once they know that a client should be able to get some help, the referral of telling us that that help is needed is something that, or helping someone to make the appointment or supporting them as they come in is really appreciated. If someone wants to talk to the lawyer about what we've told a client, we have something called lawyer-client confidentiality. We're not going to talk about anything that we've talked about with our client without your permission. If you give us permission to talk to someone on your behalf or tell your support worker what's gone on, we can do that. But otherwise, if you've got a support worker calling up and saying, I sent a client to see you and I just wanted to find out what happened, we're going to be really polite, but we're not going to say anything about what we talked about because that's confidential. We don't share that information without your permission. So Sometimes I know counsellors have said to people, oh, this is what you should do and your lawyer should do this. And there's been a reason that we've said, no, actually, you shouldn't do that. For a legal reason, there's a strategic reason why if you do that, you're going to get in trouble, or it can cause you difficulty, or it might put your children at risk. And there are lots of things that are told to us in confidence in our appointments that might not be clear to the support workers working outside. So it's really handy if someone wants to come in and if the client agrees to that, because we always ask our clients, is it okay for this person to come in with you, or is it okay for that person to be on the call? And if a client hesitates or says no, we might just have to say to a support worker, I'm sorry, I'm just going to have this chat for now, and we might bring you in later if that's okay. But we're always looking at what our clients need and preserving that confidentiality. And we recognize that that support is out there and is definitely important to them. But as lawyers, we have to look at what our confidentiality requires too.
I was going to say the same thing in less eloquent words than Shada. It's important. I think a lot of what I think social workers need to know is that we don't not like you. We appreciate your help with our clients, but as long as we have the consent of our clients to speak with you, and they can be easily obtained through a written consent form that allows us to talk about what their case with you, then we can. We may not always do that, but again, as Shada says, for strategic legal reasons, there's only so much that we should tell other people who are not our clients. But again, that legal ethical principle of confidentiality means that we do need permission from our clients to speak with their supports. And if our clients do give that authority, then we do help. We do work with you.
Thank you, everyone. I guess, sorry, we did have, was reading through some questions as we were talking, and I'm thinking about time. So we have a question which was directed at Kiri, but I think we can probably have everyone give an answer to this, including you, Anthony. Do you have a particular story, particular client that stands out in your mind that, you know, really inspired you, or like you had a really positive result and you're really happy with that outcome, obviously with confidentiality preserved, but you'd be able to share like what happened and why that outcome was good? So we might start with I might start with Anthony, actually, if that's okay, if you have any examples.
Sure. So as an information officer, I spoke to a customer that obviously was needing legal help, and they happened to recognize my voice, and told me that I assisted them escape a DV situation some months prior. So when I went to arrange an appointment for them about their current unrelated matter, I could see my name there under the previous intake to legal aid. So that was really, really satisfying, because part of what we do is put people, on that path to their next step. We don't really get any feedback about the outcome. So it was really nice to hear that I was able to assist somebody who was in such, horrible circumstances. It was good to hear about that outcome and to know that they were safe and well.
Oh, that's amazing. That's so good to hear. And I suppose that also shows what Kiri had mentioned earlier about like housing, and, when that's not stable, other issues can arise that you can't necessarily deal with until that's dealt with. So I guess maybe similarly in that situation, if that person wasn't able to leave that situation, they might not have been able to deal with all these other issues that they have. So
Exactly.
that's a really good outcome. Cool. Kiri, did you have anything you want to share?
Yeah, really great question. This stuff lights me up. So more recently, I've had a client who had received a compensation payout from an employment injury that he sustained. And when you receive compensation, you're actually precluded from claiming a Centrelink income for a certain period of time. So his preclusion period was something like, I think it was 12 or 14 months. And so since he was precluded, he'd actually spent all of his money. And as soon as that money ran out, he had no income no assets, and he became homeless. We intercepted him and were able to appeal the Centrelink refusal to pay him an early income to the Administrative Appeals Tribunal, and we were successful with negotiating with Centrelink. So he had had no income for 12 months and was homeless. He didn't have money to fund his medication for treatment of his mental health problems. So everything was really snowballing for this man. And I had to call the mental health hotline and police on several occasions because he was just suicidal. And he eventually got his money from Centrelink, and they agreed to pay him early before the preclusion period had officially ended. And he made a point of coming into the office to say, thank you so much. I was able to hold on because of the work that you guys did. So that was really special.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing that. Dean, do you have any stories?
Yeah, I do. Many stories, many successes, but like one general thing and then one particular in terms of process that stuck with me in my job as a children's lawyer is that as a criminal lawyer, the general point, the name of the game in criminal defense work in the criminal law is liberty, right? Freedom, right? We don't want when someone is arrested and wants to apply for bail or release, the pressure's on in order to get your client out in the community, because unless they are proven guilty by a judge or a jury, then they are presumed innocent until proven guilty, right? So the pressure's on, and so whenever I manage to get a client bailed, both children or adult, it's a good day. Also, when you win a hearing or a trial, based after all the evidence is in or presented, if a judge or jury says that my client's not guilty, you get a natural high for a week or longer. And so that's one of the good things about criminal defense work. In terms of the general, so the specific, and one of why I like working in the children's court was I once represented a young person. I can't recall the offense now, but it was too serious, or he had a really bad record that meant that he was detained or remanded in custody, and he pleaded not guilty to the charge. And as part of the brief of evidence, I received some telephone intercepts or recordings of his communications with his support workers. He was in the care of the minister, so he lived in a care home. He was speaking with one of his carers at the care home, and he didn't know that I knew this, but like part of all recordings of telephone calls made by young people in custody are recorded, and it was served as part of the brief of evidence to try to get him in trouble. But in one of the conversations that was captured by that telephone intercept, I heard the young person speaking with his carer about his legal problems or socio-legal problems, and the young person felt really stressed and didn't know what to do. And so what the carer said to the young person was, "What you should call Dean. What does Dean think about it?" And the young person said, "Oh, okay, that's a good idea. I think Dean will know." And so then that was in the close of the telephone intercept. But what that showed me when I read it or listened to it was that I got through to this kid, or my client, that he felt that he had a lawyer on his side that he trusted, that to say all these legal and non-legal issues to and get some advice and counsel from. And for a children's lawyer to get that trust and from an adult or a lawyer, and for clients like that who are in custody, in care, they oftentimes don't have that adult or carer that has given them that stability or that assistance they've needed. And so to then get that kind of approbation or approval from a young person in custody was really great for me. It made me realize that that's why I do this work. Yeah.
Great, thanks, Dean. And Shada, lucky last.
I'm just thinking about, over a long career, there have been so many rewarding stories to tell about what's happened with people's situations. But to preserve client confidentiality, I'm going to sort of merge two together here, because unfortunately, one of the things that we find a lot of is helping people in circumstances where there's forced child marriage overseas. So the risk of someone who's living here, who's maybe grown up here in Australia, but family pressures have come up and their parents want to take them overseas to get married against their will, and perhaps at an age that's not legal to get married in Australia, but might be in a foreign country. So that's a pretty desperate situation for someone to be in. And just like Dean says, for a young person to actually figure out how to get that help, we find ourselves giving advice and information to people. We do a lot of community legal education at Legal Aid just to get, and what we're doing right now is part of it, letting people know that Legal Aid can help in lots of different ways. You might not know what the problem is. We can figure it out, but we might have a solution. So advising a young person about what to do if they think that they're about to be taken overseas to get forced married. Some of the high stakes matters that I've been involved in, though, are situations where someone might be on their way to the airport and they've just texted their friend or a family member saying, I'm going now. They've just taken me from school and I have to go, and I don't want to go. I don't want to leave. I want to finish my HSC. I want to stay in Australia. I don't want to get married. And so an emergency airport watch list application, basically putting a child's name on the no-fly list, is something that happens in the family law courts. It's an emergency application. That's what we deal with. And putting that together on a duty basis, putting all the court documents together, making the application, getting a child's name on the watch list, getting the Australian Federal Police to stop a plane. And did you know the family law court judges, they have power to stop a plane in Australian airspace, to actually make sure that a child is not taken out of the country. So those are pretty high stakes situations. I don't want to talk too much about situations where I know there are potentially still ongoing court cases, but I've been involved in quite a few of those. So is most of the people in my team. And they're pretty stressful when you're doing them. But afterwards you think to yourself, my gosh, that was hard, but that has made an absolutely enormous difference in the life of a young person.
Wow, I'm speechless. Thank you for sharing that, Shada. That's yeah, sounds like some pretty intense work that you do. But yeah, with some amazing outcome. We have a practical question in the chat for Anthony. How does the web chat at LawAccess work? I think people might be concerned that they will get a bot answering them. So could you give us just a super quick rundown of what the web chat entails?
Sure. So with web chat, you will speak to an information officer, so a real life human in real time, and they can provide you with information about your matter and refer you to other services that can assist. So our web chat platform is really, really good for those high volume, low complexity matters, for customers looking to find help quickly. So last year, the average wait time for web chat was around the 2-minute mark. Now, we won't ask for any personal or identifying information over web chat, but if a customer is identified as being eligible for legal aid, so eligible for an advice appointment, or they just require more assistance than we can provide over chat, then we do give them the option to be put through to our phone lines, and we could discuss their matter further that way and look to make that appointment for them as well. But definitely a real person.
Great, thank you. That's good. So what happens if it's after hours? Does that get sent via email, or do you get asked to message back another time? How does that work?
Okay, so our web chat platform is only available from 9 a.m. to 5
Oh,
p.m.
great.
And that is because you will be speaking to a real person. You'll be speaking to an information officer. So you can access our web chat function by going to the Contact Us section of the Legal Aid LawAccess website, or when you're browsing the web page, you'll get an invitation down the right-hand side of the screen to start that web chat.
Perfect. Thank you, Anthony. Now, unless anyone has anything that they're dying to share before we finish up, I will go to our wrap-up question at the end. Is there anything else that anyone would like to share before we get to that? Shada?
I can't remember what our wrap-up question is, but is it about interpreters?
I beg your pardon? Was it?
Interpreters?
Oh no, but yes. Could you tell us a bit about how you work with interpreters? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm reminded by our we're very grateful for our Auslan interpreters here on screen, and I'm reminded that for a lot of our clients, English is not their first language. Everyone who's joining us here today has some access to technology, because that's how you're seeing us, and you've got to be able to understand us. And there are a lot of people in the community who might not have access to the various forms of technology and might not have English as a first language and might have other accessibility needs that impact on them actually getting to see a lawyer or getting the advice. We have a lot of services that are trying to help make sure that people can get that assistance. And one of them is we use interpreters, telephone interpreters when we call people. If you, and I'm talking to everyone who's listening here, if you think that someone needs help who might not be able to speak English clearly or feel comfortable in communicating in English for complex legal advice, you can always tell them that when they call through, if they're making an appointment to speak to a lawyer, we can book an interpreter. And if someone calls through and says they need an interpreter, we'll call them back with one. We use interpreters face-to-face for appointments where that's needed and necessary. Certainly for any documents that we need to write up or sign, we want to make sure that people understand what they're reading and writing. And we, as Legal Aid, also do specialist training for interpreters so that interpreters can become more familiar with the complex legalese that we often use as well. So that's really important. We're all really passionate about access to justice. We recognize that there are a lot of barriers to people just being able to talk to a lawyer and get what they need. So if there is some way that we can help to make access to getting our help easier, we always want to hear about it.
Thank you
I should
so
just
much.
add as well
that
you can call LawAccess. Sorry, that you can actually call the translating and interpreting service on 131450 and ask for LawAccess if you do speak a language other than English and you'd like to speak to LawAccess with an interpreter on the line.
Thank you, Anthony. And Shara, of course. So the final question was, if there is one thing or one key message that you would like people in New South Wales to know about legal aid, your role, or the legal system, what would that be? Do I have to point to someone to start? We might start with you, Anthony, if that's okay.
Sure. So look, I want everybody watching to know that if you have a New South Wales legal problem, then LawAccess is a great place. LawAccess New South Wales is a great starting point for legal help. So we assist people from different backgrounds with different support needs with all kinds of legal problems. So if you have a legal problem, please give us a call. Even if we are not able to provide very specific tailored information for a particular problem, or if you do have a matter that legal aid can't assist with, we're never the wrong door, because we do have referral mechanisms where we will have a trusted source to refer you to for further help.
Thanks, Anthony. Dean?
Yeah, one thing, I know maybe you've given us this question already, but I was stumped when you asked it on this panel. But I think one thing is that, again, for the Children's Legal Service, legal aid is available to all children for criminal charges. There's no means test, no guidelines test, no merit test. Children are vulnerable. They need help. They need a voice, and so that they can get help from a legal aid Children's Legal Service lawyer for any of their criminal needs. But if I could add a second thing, which is about the related to what I do every day, is that legal aid is there to level the playing field, to make sure that we do provide access to justice, as Shada has mentioned. That is, the stacks are, the odds are against our clients already. They've gone through a rough life, even for the young people who've only experienced a bit of it. What legal aid does, or what I can do in my role, is that using my skills and using the resources that legal aid gives me, I do present their cases in court in a way that gives them that voice, and that it helps them get results that they wouldn't have otherwise gotten if they didn't have a lawyer. And so I think that that's what I think what Legal Aid does very well is that we do, because of the resources that we have and our principles and our ethos, we are always there for the social justice aspect of our jobs, and that particularly in the Children's Legal Service, given that we don't have any means tests or guidelines tests, I can pursue that social justice aim a lot more freely. So that's my two things, Katerina.
Thank you, Dean. Kiri.
Yeah, one thing is really difficult to pinpoint, but I would like to convey that I think Legal Aid does very well is be that safe space. And I think we hold space very well for our most disadvantaged, most vulnerable, certainly within civil law. That's our target group, those people who are displaced or experiencing deep and persistent disadvantage. And I think we get it above and beyond anything else. We understand your disadvantage and that you're seeing a solicitor on probably one of the worst days of your life, and we'll be that safe space for you.
Well put. Thank you, Kiri. And Shada, lucky last.
I guess I just want to recognize the law is hard. The systems are hard. The forms are hard. Knowing where to go and what to do is hard. No one should ever feel ashamed of coming to get legal advice because knowledge is power. So don't talk to old mate down at the pub or your neighbor's best friend's dog walker's uncle's auntie who was a lawyer who in another country, or your best friend's had a very similar situation, so you know how it goes. It's your situation deserves to get individual advice and assistance. You don't know what help can be out there, and we don't know what help you need until you ask, and you won't get in trouble for it. If we can help you, we will. If we can't help you, like Anthony said, we'll try and figure out a way that there can be help. Legal aid might not be available to run your whole case, but we might be able to give you advice and assistance about what you can do to help yourself or what other services may be available. It never hurts to find out what your options are from a real lawyer, as we all are at Legal Aid, and we really do want to help. So don't feel afraid. Sometimes people tell me they're scared of seeing a lawyer, and I say, well, I'm not scary. None of the people here are either. We all really do want to help.
Awesome, thank you. To conclude, I have just where can I go from here, which is some of the stuff we've spoken about throughout. And just the last slide, just a little reminder of the upcoming webinars that we have. So if you enjoyed this one, I'm sure you'll enjoy the Ombudsman services and meet a magistrate, barrister and solicitor. So thank you all for joining. I hope that you got a lot out of this like we did. And yeah, enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you to our panel members as well.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks for coming.